What's going on, everybody? This is another episode of Houston Ensemble, episode 19. We're heading close to 20. We had an amazing guest just a day ago, and now another amazing guest. We got Woody Witt. Woody Witt is a staple of Houston because the work he's done has had a huge impact on the city. So I thought it would only make sense to have Woody on and tell us a little bit about his experiences in this town and what he sees in the future. So thank you, Woody, for coming on.
My pleasure. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah. Let's start, because we were just talking right before about him moving down here and just watching the city grow and develop. Tell us more about that.
Well, I moved here in 1987 to go to school at University of Houston, and I didn't start off in music. I started off in electrical engineering and switched over. But I had been involved in music before. And when I got here in the late 80s, there was a pretty strong music scene in the city. And, one of the things that I noticed back then, and I didn't really think much about it until, recent years, excuse me, the African American community and the musicians and the clubs that were happening here, like in 3rd Ward and 5th Ward, were really, really strong. And a lot of the sessions that I went to back then, I would walk in and end up being like the only white dude in the room. And I wasn't even old enough to go in and play, yet I was welcomed in to come in. And at that time, people like Arnett Cobb, he was still alive, Jimmy Ford, Conrad Johnson, who used to run a session on Sunday nights at the Ritzy Lounge, Club Lavique. Conrad was one of the first guys to give me some opportunities to play. I played in his big band, and I was kind of like a regular at his jam session and would just be there hanging out and listening and learning. And I had never seen anything quite like that. I grew up in the Midwest in Omaha, Nebraska, and there was music happening there, but it wasn't like this. It was like a really different thing. And aside from that, in the city, there were clubs, there were places that were open that had music that would be happening 5-6 nights a week. Bands would have residencies. They would play in places, we're talking like pop bands and things like that, but they'd be playing 6 nights a week for 2 or 3 months at the Roof. And people would go there and they're listening to music and they're out dancing and they're partying and you could really make a decent living as a working musician. And I had never seen anything like that. So there were a lot of great musicians that I kind of picked up things from, people that I certainly admired. I was pretty green, didn't know a whole lot. Started learning tunes, playing in big bands, rehearsal big bands that were led by some of the older musicians around town. And at the same time, I changed my major and I was studying music at University of Houston. And then I left and went to North Texas. I was up there for 3 years, did my master's, started a doctorate, got married, daughter was born, ended up coming back to Houston, go back to U of H, and I went back to school and I was doing my doctorate in classical performance on saxophone and kind of going that whole direction, looking for teaching position. So it's like I was in and out of the city, but I had established myself in the city. I was playing for people like I was playing with Dave Catney some. I got to sub for Warren Sneed. Warren worked regularly with Dave. Dave was the guy who basically created Cezanne into a serious jazz club, and at the time they were open 5 nights a week. And had music happening all the time, and had investors that were putting money in to do recordings and bring artists like Herb Ellis and great pianist who's around now. I'm just blanking on his name. But Dave Catney was kind of like the instigator behind that whole thing. And he was also just a great all-around musician. He worked in the community playing, weddings and things like that. He could sing.
Did Dave start? Well, who started Saisons?
Well, it started in 1984, and Paul English and John Hansen, who was the owner of that property, they created it. And they created it because John's wife wanted a place to go listen to music. So it was kind of like a I don't know. It started off as a piano bar, and that's even what it said on the door. It said Cezanne Piano Bar. And Paul was involved in that whole thing. He was involved in helping to choose the piano and the design of the room. And then I don't know how much longer Paul was involved. He was kind of like there, and then he was out. Dave was into it maybe a year or two later, and he was involved in the club until he passed. And he really put his heart and soul into it, and created just a beautiful, beautiful scene. Mm-hmm. It was a nationally known club because we had national and international acts that were coming in and playing there. You could go see Rich Perry or Dick Oates, Peter Erskine. Dave recorded it was his second album, I think, with Mark Johnson and Peter Erskine.
Oh, cool.
Justice Records was happening here in town, and Sebastian Whitaker was doing records for them. They were bringing in our artists from outside, like Emily Remler, Herb Ellis, a lot of great music. So when I came back to Houston after going to North Texas, I took a year off, and I was just kind of like jobbing around, and then I think 1999, if I'm correct, I got asked to step in at Cezanne to take over booking. And before that, it had been Ken Ward, and then it had been Bob Henshin. And Bob Henshin had gotten kind of tired of doing it because it really was, to make that happen, it was a labor of love. It wasn't like a great money-making situation. The place operated off of door charges. So it's like if you didn't have people coming in, you couldn't. If you didn't have enough people, you didn't have enough money to pay the band. Right. So it was kind of a balancing act to make sure that you would have enough money to be able to pay the band. And I learned that very quickly and dealt with that. And I booked music in there until it closed, with the exception of like a 4-year period where Mike Wheeler did it. I just had to get away from it a little bit. But I did it all the way up until last year. And then when the club closed, I felt like it really needed to live on. So I spoke to some people, made arrangements, and got the name, found a location to reopen it. And, we reopened the weekend before everything shut down for COVID.
Right, yeah.
So we had like a grand reopening.
I remember that, actually.
And it went very well. Place was packed. And I was just so excited that this was going to happen. And then it's like, well, there's this virus.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anything. I hadn't been paying attention to that. And then here we are, now months later.
What's the state of Cezanne's right now? Like, is it hanging in there? What are you thinking?
I'm very, very fortunate in that I am not having to pay rent or anything.
Cool.
I have a kind of a collaborative agreement with Beer Paredes downtown to use the space.
Oh, okay.
And so we're still there.
Okay, good.
But it's kind of dependent upon, Beer Paredes. They're open. I mean, I know that they would like us to reopen, but it's not a really big room, and we're still operating under the same principle of collecting cover charges.
Right.
And if we have to limit the number of people that are going to come in,
right,
or we can't expect there to be that many people, I don't want musicians coming in and playing for nothing.
Right.
So I just want to wait until it's a little more calm, seems more secure. It's a waiting game.
Yeah.
Can you, I feel like you're kind of touching on something I've been thinking about a lot. Can you talk about the history of paying musicians in the city. I feel like there's a lot of talk within, the jazz community, but also just the musician community in Houston right now about clubs / venues just really lowballing everybody.
Well, I can give you a really interesting perspective because I can tell you from the standpoint of being a musician.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then also tell you from the standpoint of being a club owner.
Yeah.
And that is that, as a musician, I think that we end up being our own worst enemy in a way, because, someone stands up and says, they have a principle. I'm not going to go out. I'm not going to play a gig if it doesn't pay $100.
Right.
Well, then the next thing there's other musicians that would be like, well, I'll go play for $75, or I'll play for $50,
yeah,
or I'll play for free. And what that does is that shows the clubs, the venues, the bookers, people like that, they don't have to pay.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can get someone that's going to come do it for nothing or for close to nothing, I'll do that. So the musicians, that was one good thing that came out of the musicians union, was to kind of set a standard for what they're supposed to be paid and uphold that. And it just doesn't hold true. But on the other side, being a club owner, anytime a venue is paying money for entertainment, they're taking a risk themselves. They're spending money on something that they don't necessarily have to.
Totally.
If it's a restaurant or another kind of venue that's making money some other way, this just ends up being an expenditure in most of their views. I do believe that it is an asset to have music. It's something that, while it might not bring droves of people coming in, it can create a certain atmosphere or feeling in the room, or a venue can develop a reputation for having good music, and people end up going there because of the music, not necessarily because of the food or the drinks or whatever else they offer.
Yeah.
But historically, as a musician, I've certainly had my share of times earlier on in my career where I was taken advantage of by band leaders, by venues. Yeah. I got stories, man. I people that shall remain nameless who bounced checks and owed people large sums of money, and you end up playing gig after gig after gig, and
you don't get nothing.
You get nothing, or you end up getting a check, and then it's like everyone in the band is running to the bank to try to cash it first to get whatever's available.
Oh God, that does not sound good.
There was a band leader that I worked with that was a routine.
Dang.
Yeah.
Early on, and I was just happy to be out there playing. Here I am in my early 20s, and it's like I want to get the experience of playing, and of course that's how we learn. That's how we grow. You learn things in school, but you don't really learn until you're out there and you're doing it. That's where it really comes together for you.
Ideally, having music and booking music is like a synergistic effect. The band is doing what they need to do to have a following, to actually, get people to listen to their music.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate goal of a band, is to get people to listen to their music, and then hopefully then come out to see them. And then on the other hand, the venue needs to do what they got to do to make people aware that they're having music at their spot. So then you have this beautiful little effect that happens. Yeah. But usually the conflict occurs when one or both are not really doing that role, really fulfilling that role well.
Yeah.
And then you have your trouble.
Right.
But I'm curious about your really horror stories that you I'm trying to hear one of those. Anonymous, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, like I was saying,
Redacted.
there was a band leader that I worked with years ago, where it would be, you'd get and I was working with this band several nights a week. I'd have like a steady here, weddings, things like that would come up. So some weeks I might have 2, 3, 4 gigs with this band. And, you'd end up getting your check. And at the time, didn't come from money or anything. So it's like I really counted on what I was going to get to cover my bills. Mm-hmm. And it was very much like I said. It was like you'd have to call the bank to see if they had funds. Wow. Some people would end up getting there earlier and get the money, and then before you know it, the money is out of the account. There's nothing left. Well, this particular leader would get deposits and such, like for gigs that were coming up, and he was like so behind and not managing his funds that he's spending money for the gig that we have next week.
Right.
So when it comes time to pay us, he didn't have it. He didn't have it.
That's crazy.
And I know people that he ended up owing, large 4 figures to, several thousands of dollars.
Yeah. How did you address that during that? Like, was that ever addressed actually with him? Because how do you just go the next day or the next week?
I just got to tell you a story. I didn't do this, but I just got to tell. There's a couple of stories that just stand out to me, like these old school musicians. Yeah. There was a great musician, rest his soul, Dick Wilkie. He's a saxophone player, reed player, really interesting person. And he used to play with Stan Kenton's band for years, and he worked with big bands in town. And he didn't really consider himself a soloist, but he was like a premier section player. Could read, play his doubles, play in tune, just great. So he worked with another band leader who was kind of like that in this city, and he owed Dick money. So Dick drove this old Cadillac, I don't know, 1974, 75 Cadillac, sedan DeVille, something like that. He ends up at the band leader's house. He drives right up on the yard, up to the front porch, puts the bumper on the front porch and starts revving the engine. Oh, man. And he's like, either come out with the money or I'm pushing your porch over. And sure enough, man, he managed to come up with the funds to pay him. And then another, you probably would think I would be making up some of these stories or names, but I've heard them from more than one person. Another woodwind player I know, his name was Fran Dudash. And he used to teach at schools and, teach private lessons and all, old school dude. He showed up at that same band leader's house with a gun.
Damn.
And he was like, where's my money? And again,
respect.
That's respect right
people
there.
managed to come up with the money. And it's like, okay.
Sometimes you got to do that. Sometimes you got to pull a gun out.
I've never done that. I've never resorted to that. All I ever ended up doing, I don't know, I guess I'm just too nice.
It's tough.
I could never push that hard, man.
Somebody recently, a few weeks ago, stole my bass guitar, my whole bag.
Oh, wow.
iPad included.
Oh,
and
man.
what was
I'm
really
sorry.
crazy is we totally know who it was.
Yeah, we found him
on the
everything.
camera and everything.
We got him on camera.
Kind of worked at Axelrad.
Oh, wow.
Another homeless guy. He was kind of a homeless transient type person.
Disclaimer, he didn't really work anywhere.
Yeah, he didn't.
He was one of those cats that kind of like got some work
take
here
out,
and there.
It's like take out the
got some work
trash.
here,
Oh, yeah.
Take out the trash for a couple bucks and like a piece of pizza.
He's just like part of the atmosphere.
Right.
And so this other homeless guy who's in the area actually told us he lives down the street in this tent. So me and Armin and Corey Wilson, thankfully they got my back. We're like, okay, we're going down there to find the thing. And we're like, well, we could, intimidate with some force.
Yeah.
And we go down there, but that's not us. We're like you're saying, we're just like, we don't like to be violent or peaceful. I'm probably a pacifist at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And we were searching, just with a light. Is the bass guitar here? It's actually not there. But we realized later that he got into a car and gave it to somebody else. And You know, in that moment, you want to be so like, give me the bass guitar.
Yeah.
You know, we're in Texas.
Yeah.
But I can't even do that. Thankfully, you know, I had a huge support system here in Houston, and people like donated money to me, and I was able to recoup really well.
Fantastic.
So, and my family, of like my extended family, they really helped me out too. And it's like, okay, learning situation.
But
We'll
that's tricky though, you know, getting a new instrument.
Because it's your livelihood.
Yeah,
and if I didn't have a support system.
But even from the smaller standpoint of like if it's an instrument that you really love and have grown attached to, and you know it intimately, and then all of a sudden you have to turn around and get something, even if you got the same instrument.
Do you know Jonathan Peachy?
Yeah.
He's a bass player. It was actually his bass, and I bought it from him. It was this beautiful 6-string fretless Kiesel, carbon Kiesel bass guitar. So, horrible. Thank God it wasn't my upright bass. But I don't think anybody can really steal that.
It's kind of hard to run away with that.
Yeah, but that I would have gone into debt, and I wouldn't be here right now if that bass was stolen.
He grabbed it. He really pulled a grab and dash.
He did.
It's a grab and dash.
I'll give him this one thing. It was very weird. He actually walked back into Axelrad with the guitar. Yeah. And we watched all of it on the camera.
Wow.
But we had thought that we had it. But it was stolen, you know, while we were loading. And I think he asked somebody if it was somebody's, but it was weird. And then he kind of hid it. And then he got into this car. And then he told us, he kept lying. And then he said he gave it to a gang member. He said he gave it to a gang member, actually. And then we were talking to him, me, Corey, and Armin, about the bass guitar. We said, we know you took it. Just give it back and it's fine. And then he called the police on us at the underpass.
Well,
and they're like, "Why didn't you call us?" I'm like, "Man, I'm about to, but you know, this I know exactly where everything is right now, so I need to take it into my own hands." And of course, they're not going to do anything. I filed the police report, etc.
I would hope that something like that, being a rather unique instrument, might pop up somewhere. You notify like pawn shops.
I did file the report, but unfortunately, I feel like they might actually realize that that's too easy to do. Like it would pop up, but who knows? It seemed like more of an easy drug money type ordeal. Yeah. But hey, you know, we move on and we learn. We're here to learn lessons.
Indeed.
And it's a good story,Ll tell you.
Yeah, it's a crazy story.
If you were there, you'd been pumped up. You'd be like,
we were kind of hyped. You know, we had just been to that Pasadena gun show. We're ready to go. You know, we got to keep the house locked down, so we had to, you know, take those steps.
Wow.
Now, what I want to know is, what is like a gig? It doesn't have to be a big gig or anything, but just like a gig that you can never forget.
Oh yeah.
For some reason.
Oh wow.
First thing.
I got some for sure.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done a lot of recordings through the years. Yeah. I think I've got like 14 or 15 of my own, and I don't know how many, 50, 60 other recording projects with other people, things like that. And certainly some of those really stand out and that I'll never forget. I mean, my second CD, I mean, there's like a really long story connected with that whole thing, but I'll just never forget that. I recorded with, a great band. It was with Randy Brecker and Dave Kikoski on piano, Ari Honig on drums, and Johannes Weidemuller on bass.
Whoa.
That was my second. That was my second CD.
That's so cool.
I recorded it in New York in 2004. I went to school with Ari at University of North Texas, and I played with Randy at a jazz festival that they used to have here in Kemah.
Cool. And
got to know him, but that's one that stands out. But I guess one that stands out to me right now, that's kind of in the forefront of my mind is because Michael Brecker passed like the anniversary of his death would have been, I think, yesterday.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
And I got to know him through the years, not only before I met Randy, but also after knowing Randy. And he was just such a beautiful person, great person. But I got to play with him at University of Houston when I was back here doing my doctorate. And what an amazing experience. Like I played in master class for him. He ended up having the drummer get up, and he sat down and played drums with me, and then we played together on stage, and we're trading back and forth. It's like whoever your, one of your idols on your instrument is, and you get to spend time, with them. But even off the stage, it was like great just talking to him, and I hung out with him. I drove him, to and from the airport, and got to chat, more. And just, like I said, just such a beautiful person. It was really tragic when he went.
Yeah.
But that stands out.
I've been just looping Brecker like live tracks for weeks already.
Yeah.
Like all that live stuff is like, it doesn't get better than that.
Yeah. There's a lot of people who've been posting videos and stuff
New
recently.
Stuff. Yeah.
And I just listened to a bootleg of the band that he had with Joey Calderazzo, Mike Stern, Jeff Andrews, and Adam Nussbaum. And I heard that band here in Houston at Rockefeller's in 1989. Yeah, we used to have venues, that like presented things like that, where you hear.
So
I saw Branford Marsalis there too.
By you saying that, are you saying that the number of quality venues has decreased?
I just don't see. I mean, how often, other than like DeCamera, and I think it's great that they do what they do. But other than DeCamera, where else do you see something like that happen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't really name a place. There's certainly not a club.
Besides,
that does it.
Cezanne, when it was open to an extent.
Yeah, but anything that we did was very small scale. It might be an individual or something. We didn't have a size or budget to be able to bring in a band.
Yeah.
Like that.
I saw Joshua Redman and Brad Meldau at, I think, University of Houston, like a few years ago. I could have the venue totally wrong.
Wow.
Because that was when I was just getting to Houston, and I wasn't super familiar, but I believe it was. But that was like one thing.
Yeah, that I would guess. I don't remember that particular concert, but I would guess that was either Society Performing Arts or DeCamera sponsored.
Sure, yeah.
If it took place, because that seems like that's about the only organization doing it.
I'm kind of half expecting Houston. Like, I'd be really shocked, especially since LA is shut down, New York is shut down. Basically, most big cities are shut down. I'd be really surprised if Houston didn't start like musically booming a little bit, entertainment booming a little bit.
Well, that's kind of what
if it doesn't, I'll be like, how's this? What is going on? Like.
And we were kind of saying that, I think, right before we started. It seems like a lot of people, a lot of musicians coming back here from New York,
even from
LA.
Austin too, because Austin's more locked down than we are.
Yeah, they are.
So,
and that, then when everybody gets back here, they're gonna be like, there are not enough places to play, and then they'll just create places to play.
Yeah,
which would be sweet.
That's what I'm hoping for.
That would be great.
I'd love to see that happen.
What do you? What's your opinion right now on like what the city should be doing? Do you think we should be more open? Do you think we should be less open?
Oh, wow.
Give us your viral perspective.
Wow. I'm really, honestly, I'm kind of like at conflict with the whole thing, because, well, just like from the standpoint of teaching, I teach at Houston Community College, and I'm full-time over there. Everything is online. Lessons, ensembles, everything. It's crazy, and it's very frustrating to try to make that all work. I don't mind private instruction, but trying to do an ensemble
Yeah, it's odd.
and make something like that work online. It's really difficult. And then I also teach at University of Houston, and I took over for the classical saxophone teacher this past year, and I'm really been putting a lot of time and focusing on that. And I'm teaching predominantly in person. I have a large studio space. We're able to be, distanced, but for the most part, I'm just being trusting of the students that we are, responsible and smart. Someone has been exposed to something or whatever, that they let me know and don't come in, so that we don't run the risk of me or all of us ending up getting sick and having to move everything online. That said, since I've been teaching online and teaching in person at the same time, it's made me realize how much I miss teaching in person.
Yeah.
And how insufficient online instruction is. There is so much that's lost. I mean, even with my most productive students and all that, it is not the same as being in person. So you got that, then we're talking about other things happening in the community. Like this last weekend, I played with Houston Symphony, did a concert with them.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they're doing it very well. I think they're being responsible. It's socially distanced. They only allow 500 people, I think, in the room, in that hall, and it seats like 5,000, I think. So 500.
Does it seat 5,000?
I think, or it's.
I know it's big.
It's
I've been
several
in, I just
thousand.
didn't know.
I'm going to say it's at least 2,000 to 3,000.
Yeah, that would make sense.
You got 2 balconies,
Mm-hmm.
and they opened those up, even
That's
with
cool.
just 500 people. So they've got people.
That's a good number of
groups.
people still.
And I played with a big band, and we're, like the second alto player is sitting like over there, taking up the entire stage.
Mm-hmm.
Have to wear masks when you come in. You had to get COVID tested before you come in. They had the saxophones come in through one door. The brass is coming in through another door. The rhythm section's coming in through another door. There's a monitor there, asking if you have any symptoms. They're doing everything.
Oh.
We all had our own tables for setup.
Oh, wow.
So we're not interacting. So, I mean, seeing that, I applaud what they're doing. The fact that they're able to do that, and that not only are they doing live performances, but they're doing live streaming. They're one of the only, I think they are the only orchestra in the United States that's doing live stream performances. There are orchestras that are doing streaming concerts, but they're recording them and then putting them out. Mm-hmm. What they're doing is a live stream. Mm-hmm. So you're seeing a live performance, and that's great. I just wish that we could do more of that in our music community.
Yeah.
It feels like from the music standpoint that we are, even though we're open here compared to a lot of other places, we're still like shut down.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's not support. There's no financial support.
Right.
I
Which
applied for
forces
a
you to
grant
work.
for the club. I was trying to get money to be able to reopen. Got shut, got nothing. Got nothing from that.
That's actually surprising.
Yeah, well, and it was a very specific grant. It was for venues that were 200 people or less. And I went through the whole process, submitting financials and all that, and we didn't get it. Mucky Duck received a grant.
Mucky Duck.
The
Is that a
Mucky
place
Duck.
here in here?
Uh-huh.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it's a long-running venue.
Oh, okay.
But they don't do jazz. They're kind of rocks. They sometimes
Folk.
do some folk.
Yeah, they do like folk, rock, singer-songwriter type stuff.
Now, there is a funny... I feel like, yes, good that they're taking the precautions and still allowing things to happen, but there was a picture that came out from HSPVA of a student playing saxophone.
Oh, yeah,
Did you see the picture? So for everybody who doesn't know what this picture looked like, I wonder if we can put it in, if we can edit it in later.
Yeah.
This student is playing saxophone, and he's got a mask on, but it's kind of attached to the mouthpiece, and then the bell is covered in a big black sock, and then he's also playing within a plexiglass window, and it's like everything is totally enclosed, and I was like,
And he's got a mask on.
okay,
Yeah, the horns in a bag.
This might be too much. It's like a meme at that point, but I know they're trying to be careful. I do understand that.
I get it.
But what I also am worried about is that, you know, like, there are other sicknesses that are also very contagious and bad that we don't worry that much about. I know this is a different thing.
There's so much controversy around this, you know, around the virus itself and how things are, cases that are reported, number of deaths that are reported. I know that. But I also know people who have had it and gotten sick, and I know of people who've died from it.
Yeah.
So it's like,
it's tough.
It's very difficult. And I also know that it's not going to go away. This is something that we're going to end up having to live with in some shape or form, just like we live with the flu or the common cold. Yeah. And
or cancer.
Or cancer. Yeah, exactly. Or any number of other illnesses. And I'm sure that over time, you know, they'll develop a very good vaccine, and it might end up being something that the future generation, they don't even think twice about it. It's like, well, you just get your COVID vaccine.
Yeah.
Or maybe it'll go away completely at some point.
That would be interesting. I'm just curious, would you get in line tomorrow for the vaccine?
I would. Yeah, I would take it.
The reason I asked that is because, remember, we were talking about that doctor.
Yeah.
Joseph Verone, who we had on our podcast. And it was really interesting because he came on here and he said, you know, this was before the vaccine came out. This was a few months ago. And he said, I would never get the vaccine first. Why would I ever do that? I don't want to be a guinea pig.
Yeah.
And then the healthcare workers are the first people getting it. And then he made a big post the other day about getting it. And I was like, you're kind of like backtracking on your words to an extent. And there is a lot of, you know, there's a little bit of worry about something that's fast tracked, especially something that can modify our DNA. And that's not what, you know, typically happens when we receive vaccines, considering that it's an mRNA. But yeah, I'm just curious about your opinion.
I would get it because personally, what I'd like to do is be able to get on with my life.
I know.
You know.
Yeah.
And I'd like us to get to some sense of normal. Yeah. Again, whatever that means. I mean, it's crazy. Like when I was driving over here earlier today, I ended up driving through town. I'm driving through Montrose, and I drove by the old Cezanne just to kind of see. I hadn't been by there. Still had the letters up on the wall there. I was surprised. It's like, man, they haven't taken that down yet. But I saw all these small businesses, like restaurants and things in that area that have shut down. And it's just sad.
Yeah.
I have friends in New York, and there was I don't know if he's a journalist, but this guy had gone through an 8-block length of Hell's Kitchen. Like on 9th Avenue or whatever. He just, I don't know, 44th through 50th or something like that, or 52nd. And he found 75 places closed.
Oh, wow.
In that small
little
scary area.
Oh, yeah.
And, I mean, if there's 75 places closed there, then how many are actually closed in the entire city?
Yeah.
And how many places are closed in other cities? And how many of these places are not going to reopen? How is it going to change the landscape of all these cities? How is it going to change our economy? Where are these people going to go? What are they going to do? I mean, that's what it makes me start thinking about. It's like, man, it's just changing everything. I'm in a way, I want to be optimistic, as you both are, about Houston potentially booming and having, you know, music kind of resurge here. But the other side of me looks at what's going on, and it makes me very fearful that even before the virus, you know, live music's important, but I think a lot of people just kind of take it for granted and they overlook it. And now it gives them an easier way to overlook it.
Totally.
And I think we need it. I think it's important. I think it has to be there. I think it's a very, very significant part.
There's nothing like it.
Yes, and it really is one of the only things that we have that I could truly identify as being cultural.
Mm-hmm. And it's, it's like, as we've talked about, Armin and I before, it's spiritually healing.
Yes.
It brings people together. For example, very early on, March, April, May, June, actually more like May, June, July, when we were like really locked down, me, Armin, and Corey would go to Menil Park at the Menil Drawing Institute.
Nice.
And we'd be playing there almost every day. One reason is that, hey, we're out of work and it's busking, so we can get some money from it. But two, what we realized afterward is that we actually started drawing this crowd out every day. Families, wow. people walking around, and everyone was so thankful. They're like, this is amazing. This is exactly what we need. They could be on their blankets and we're outside and it's beautiful. So that was kind of a really interesting sign to me that it is so impactful, music, and it really does bring people together. And if we stifle that, that's going to be a problem.
Agreed.
Just for literal population morale.
But we're going on a year now.
I know. It's really scary.
Yeah. I mean, forgive me for being blunt, but it has to stop somewhere because, like you said, we're living with the flu.
Mm-hmm.
So we're living with it.
And,
so it's time to live with it.
And many people are, it's like, okay, we do understand it's dangerous.
Yeah.
But we're all, willing to we're willing to take the risk to be here right now to some extent.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Like, we're not that worried about it, but we are worried about it, and we want to be careful. And a lot of people, they're going to the Galleria.
Yeah.
They're like, I understand.
That's another thing. You can go to the Galleria. Yeah. And then why isn't this restaurant open?
Yeah, I know. I'm with you there.
So
you can go to the grocery store. Well, you have to go to the grocery store, obviously.
You have to
order.
Yeah.
Food online
or even the sense that they say, hey, it's going to travel through the air ducts, but then we're all packed into the urgent care room waiting to get the test.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? That doesn't make sense.
I know, man.
But
I think we could put like a long list of these contradictions. I mean, someone explained to me why you have to wear a mask when you go into an effing restaurant, and then everyone sits down and they take it off.
But then only close bars. And I was at the Yard House on New Year's Eve. I was playing a gig, Houston City Center, and I walked into the Yard House to go to the bathroom, and it was packed, like packed.
Yep.
And they had these clear dividers at the bar. But everybody was just leaning back and just talking past the divider.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I mean, I'm cool. I'm I take my vitamins and whatnot. But I'm like, come on, guys. It's getting a little crazy out here. Yeah. And I was doing a lot of virtual teaching.
Yeah.
And teaching upright bass virtually. I'm sure any instrument is tough, but I feel like upright bass is so tough.
You doing more than one camera?
No. It's just Zoom, and I'm like in my room, and that was very hard. We were making progress.
Yeah.
But since then, I've been able to go back to Episcopal High School and teach, and like I was there right before this, and it's much nicer and fine. We'll wear our masks and wash my hands, but we're able to get the bass work done that we need to get done.
Yeah.
So, and it's a treat. And I wish we could do that more.
Yeah, we got to figure out what the nice middle line is and how we can just like be happy and move on a little bit. Start to do that slowly, get back into it, because it's time. It's time. Everybody's out there getting their vitamin D. It's time we're all out there and like back to it.
We're in low vitamin D. Yeah. People are getting sick, and maybe that's because they're inside all day, not getting any vitamin D.
Yeah.
What do you think? Armin and I on New Year's Day, we did like a crystal ball episode is what we called it, where we kind of just made predictions about the future. Mm-hmm. If you're thinking about our upcoming president, Joe Biden
Okay.
he's taken the seat. What's your prediction on what's going to happen regarding the country with him?
Oh, wow.
I know you got a lot of people, a lot of business stuff. You don't want to ruin anything.
No. I don't care about that.
Okay, great.
I don't know.
You don't know? I
have no idea. I mean, to be honest, I'm kind of like concerned what's going to happen even in the first 100 days.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, political opinions aside, I feel like what happened over this past week is like ridiculous.
It's crazy.
And I definitely think that people need to be held accountable, including the president.
Yeah.
And yes, we see that through his impeachment, and I hope it goes through. But there's going to be a trial now. There will be a trial in the Senate likely during Biden's first 100 days.
Yeah.
And so now the attention's going to be diverted, really, in a way.
You're right.
You know,
that's a good point.
So how much is he going to get accomplished? I don't know. I'm not really sure. I hope a lot. I would hope that all this maybe brings people together in some way, and that there's some there is some bipartisanship. I mean, we're seeing some signs of that just in the vote for the impeachment.
Right.
But I really hope that there's more of that, because, God, when it comes down to it, what difference does it make if you're a Democrat or a Republican or whatever? Can't we get moving forward with just being Americans?
Yeah.
And doing something that's good for our country and good for the people that are here, good for businesses, good for all people.
Mm-hmm.
But as long as you got the powers in place and people motivated by other things like money and power, I don't think it'll ever happen. It's going to be a constant battle. It's something that we'll deal with until the end of time.
Mm-hmm.
That's my thought. People like to talk about it, but they don't really like to do anything.
Yeah. Yeah,
we're always under the scrutiny of some government, some organizations that telling us that they're going to do this or they're going to do that. And meanwhile, we're going on with our lives and paying them our taxes and everything's going well.
Yeah.
And we never truly know what they're doing or why we're trusting some invisible face somewhere to tell us something and tell us, hey, here's $600 for your by the way, just stay home, you know.
Yeah.
And it's really a bizarre thing when you like zoom out and you look at what you're doing as a citizen, and then you start thinking like, you know, maybe like I said before, like the synergistic effect between the band and the venue. There should be a synergistic effect between the people and the government.
Oh.
Well, there's nothing of that nature even happening right now.
I feel like they're so removed.
They're so removed. So
I don't think they can even. I don't think the majority, more than the majority, probably almost all of them, have no sense of what it means to be an average American.
No.
Oh yeah.
They're in this deep game right now that we have no part in.
Mm-hmm. We just sit back and watch the political theater.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's it.
We're just watching C-SPAN. Now, how far away is your rehearsal from here?
It's I-10 and Witt. It's not too far.
Okay. Well, we just want to keep an eye on our time.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll probably end here in a couple minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything you want to say about any message you want to get across to the people, Woody? Anything you'd like to really say out here? This is your chance.
This is it. Well, I mean, the one thing I would like to say is that I believe in music. I believe in that. I believe in the power of that, like you were talking about, its significance. And, I think it's great that you're doing this. I think this is really wonderful. This kind of thing should happen more. I think, though, also that the music that we do is important as it is culturally. It's always going to end up being something that's kind of on the fringe.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that for a minute. I mean, is the average person going to come and listen to you and be drawn into the music? Are they going? Does the average person even have the attention span to listen to a band anymore?
Yeah, any band.
Any band. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be like some really heavy.
Yeah.
Do they have the attention span to sit and listen? I mean, I think back playing shows, some really good shows, and especially in recent years, and looking out, and I see people that are basically living
They're still in there.
through this.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I mean, even though they might be involved and they're enjoying it the whole time, all they're doing is like taking pictures. But then they turn around and they're taking a picture of themselves or a picture of their martini or whatever, and it's like, put it down.
Yeah.
Like, allow yourself to like be carried away
Right.
in the moment with what's
Yeah.
happening here. But only a select few, I think, can really do that.
Yeah. It's like, what comedian was saying that, like, you know, people are like, oh yeah, look how cool my camera is. It's like super HD. I have the most HD camera, and they're right here. And he's just like, dude, real life is like the most HD ever.
It doesn't
Yeah.
get any
You're not
more
gonna
HD
get-
than this, right?
Yeah. What are you doing? So.
Your memory.
I have one ending question for you. We kind of like to do this thing where we have this question that we ask everybody. What is your view on the meaning of life?
Oh my
And
gosh.
you don't have to make it super detailed or anything. Kind of just whatever comes to you. Like the meaning of life, the nature of reality, and why we're here, why we're alive and thinking right now. Opinion.
Yeah, you can just like make some up if you're desperate to get out of it.
No, I won't do that. Well, I think the meaning of life is love.
All right.
The meaning of life
Love
is and spreading it and sharing it.
Yeah.
Nice.
You know, and we all find ways to do it.
Yeah.
And those of us, you know, that really are passionate about music, hopefully it comes through what we do there.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And I think that's what it's about more than anything, and to impact as many people as you can with that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like that when I first started teaching, I like a lot of people, I think I started teaching because it was like the thing to do in order to make money, you know, to supplement your playing career or whatever.
Right.
But over the years, I've really grown to love teaching and seeing what kind of an impact you can have on someone, you know, helping them to discover themselves or their direction and their path. And, you know, so no matter what your career is, that's really kind of what it's about, right? It's just about sharing that with others so that it lives on.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes on to the next generation,
Mm-hmm.
and just keeps on.
Yep.
That's it.
We gotta keep it moving.
Perfect.
So that's why, I mean, and that's why we have to play,
Yeah.
and that's why we have to do that, because that's our means of expressing.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And that's why we do this podcast.
That is partially
Yeah.
why we do the
We
podcast.
gotta keep people informed about all the beautiful psycho-spiritual musical things that are happening in this thing. So we thank Witt for coming through one more time. This has been Houston Ensemble number 19. Please follow us at Houston Ensemble on all social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, all that good stuff. We really think we're doing something amazing here, and we'd love for you to be part of it. Check out our website, check out where we're playing, and we're gonna also plug Cezanne, everything that Woody's got going on in the description. And thanks again. We'll see you guys next time on 3.
Thank you.
1, 2, 3.